Emily Carter had learned a long time ago that expecting anything from her father was a mistake. At 27 years old, she had accepted that David Carter would never be the father she once wished for. But acceptance didn't erase the memories. It didn't make the absence hurt any less. She sat in her small Brooklyn apartment, absent-mindedly stirring her coffee as she gazed out the window. It was a gray morning, the city buzzing below her, but she was lost in thought. Her father had never been a bad man, not in the traditional sense. He never raised his hand at her, never yelled or cursed. But he had hurt her in ways that didn't leave visible scars. David Carter was the kind of man who believed paying for things equaled parenting. Bills were covered, birthday gifts were mailed, but the moments that mattered, the bedtime stories, the school recitals, the days when she just needed her dad, he was never there. Her mother, Linda Carter, had tried to fill the void. She had been everything David wasn't, warm, present, loving. But no matter how much love Linda gave, she couldn't replace a father's absence. Emily's mind drifted back to the day it all became clear. She was 13 when it happened. The divorce. That day was seared into her memory, playing back like an old, worn-out film reel. Her mother had been crying, but not in a way that asked for comfort. It was the quiet, exhausted kind of crying, the kind that came when you'd given up fighting for something that had already slipped away. And David, he had packed his bags as if he was checking out of a hotel. No emotion, no hesitation. Emily had stood beside her mother at the doorway, arms crossed, watching him fold his shirts with the same casualness someone might pack for a weekend trip. "You can visit any time, kiddo," he had said, zipping up his suitcase. His voice was light, as if he were making small talk, as if this wasn't the last time she would ever see him as her father. Emily had nodded numbly, but even at 13, she knew that wasn't a promise. It was a suggestion. For the first few months, he had called, once a week, then once a month. Then, nothing, just silence. The excuses were predictable. "Work is crazy right now. Maybe next weekend. I'll make it up to you." But he never did. By the time Emily was 16, she had stopped checking her phone for his name. By the time she was 18, she no longer expected a birthday call. By the time she was 20, she had stopped calling him Dad in her head. And now, at 27, she barely thought about him at all. At least that's what she told herself. She had built a life for herself, a life without him. Emily worked as a freelance journalist, hustling to pay the bills in a city that never slept. Her small apartment wasn't much, but it was hers, paid for by her own hard work without a single penny from David Carter. She hadn't spoken to him in months, maybe longer. And truthfully, she was fine with that. But fate had a cruel sense of humor, because on one ordinary Sunday afternoon, everything changed. She would find out in the most unexpected way possible that she hadn't just been forgotten. She had been erased. It was a lazy Sunday afternoon when Emily's world shattered. She had spent the morning cleaning her apartment, an old habit from her mother, who believed that a cluttered space led to a cluttered mind. With the sun filtering through the windows, she had wiped down countertops, vacuumed the small rug by her bed, and finally collapsed onto her worn-out couch with a cup of coffee. Phone in hand, she scrolled through social media mindlessly, her thoughts half-focused on the soft jazz playing from her Bluetooth speaker. And then it hit her like a truck, a photo, right there, in the middle of her feed. At first it didn't register, just another wedding picture, but then her brain caught up. Her finger froze over the screen. There, standing in the center of the image, was David Carter, her father, grinning, ear to ear. Dressed in a sharp black suit, a glass of champagne in hand, standing beside a woman Emily had never seen before. And beside that woman, 2 teenagers, a boy and a girl, around 16 and 18, smiling like they belonged there. Her stomach twisted, her chest tightened. Then her eyes drifted to the caption, "My new family, feeling blessed." Her heart stopped. New family. Emily blinked. Maybe she had read it wrong. Her thumb trembled as she clicked the post, opening the full album. And there it was. A lavish wedding ceremony. A beautiful outdoor reception, twinkling lights strung across the venue, the cake, the speeches, the first dance. Everyone smiling, laughing, celebrating. Everyone except her, because she wasn't there. She hadn't even known about it. Her fingers gripped the phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. Emily's breath came in sharp, uneven gasps as she scrolled through the comments, one after another. "Congrats, Uncle David. So happy for you and your beautiful family. What a stunning bride. The kids look so happy. David, you deserve all the happiness in the world. Your family is just perfect." Perfect. Emily felt like she was going to be sick. She scrolled faster, searching, desperate for some kind of mistake, some sign that this wasn't what it looked like. But there was nothing. No mention of her, no sign of her name, like she never existed. The realization crashed over her like an ice-cold wave. David Carter hadn't just forgotten about her. He had erased her, the memory that stung like a knife. A lump formed in Emily's throat as memories rushed back. It had been just a few weeks ago, the phone call, the first one in months. David's voice had been unusually light, almost casual. "Hey, kiddo, just wanted to let you know, I'm getting married." Emily had paused, her heart doing a weird little stutter. "Oh, congratulations, I guess," she had said, trying to keep her voice neutral. David chuckled. "Nothing big, just a small celebration. Just the two of us. Just the two of them." She had swallowed her feelings, convincing herself it wasn't a big deal. Maybe it was a quick courthouse wedding. Maybe it really was small. But this was planned. This was extravagant. This was a goddamn production. A wedding with guests, with laughter, with her stepmom's kids, front and center and not her. The betrayal hit like a punch to the gut. Emily's breath shook as she sat frozen on her couch, her pulse hammering in her ears. She tried to blink back the stinging in her eyes, but she wasn't going to cry. Not for him, not anymore. Her father had replaced her. A slow, cold rage spread through her veins. This wasn't just about a wedding. This was about years of being treated like an afterthought, like she was nothing more than a loose end from his past. And he thought she would just accept it? That she would see those pictures and stay silent? Oh no! David Carter was about to learn that Emily Carter wasn't that easy to forget. She wasn't just going to sit there. She wasn't going to let this slide. She was going to make sure everyone knew what he had done. Starting now. Emily's hands trembled as she opened Facebook. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard. Then slowly she began to type. "Congratulations on your wedding, Dad. Wishing you and your new family all the happiness in the world. Since I wasn't invited, I'll celebrate from afar, just like you always made me do growing up. Hope your stepkids appreciate the father they got, since I never had one. Cheers." Her heart pounded in her chest. For a moment, she hesitated. But then, she pressed post, and just like that, the storm began. Emily watched the screen, heart hammering in her chest. For a brief second, doubt crept in. Should she have posted it? Would it make her look bitter, desperate? But then, ding, ding, ding. The first notification, then another and another, like an avalanche. Aunt Claire commented, "Wait, you weren't there?" Her cousin, Jamie, "What the hell?" David told us it was a private ceremony. He didn't even mention you. An old friend from high school. WTF, Emily, are you serious? Your dad didn't invite you. That's beyond messed up. The comments kept flooding in. She could almost hear the whispers forming behind every single one of them. And then, the first DM, a name she hadn't seen in years. Mom's sister, Aunt Rachel. "Emily, I had no idea you weren't invited. I thought maybe you just didn't want to come. This is awful. I'm so sorry." Her stepmom's old friend. David made it sound like the wedding was tiny, just him and his new wife. This doesn't make sense. Why wouldn't he invite his own daughter? Emily clenched her jaw. Exactly. Because he had chosen to erase her. And now, she was about to make damn sure no one ignored it. The snowball effect. 15 minutes later, the likes doubled, then tripled, then... David Carter's phone number flashed across her screen. She smirked. Finally. For once, he was the one chasing her. Decline. Her hands were shaking, not from fear, from power. He had spent years pushing her aside, treating her like an obligation he could ignore. Now, he was scrambling. Her phone kept buzzing with notifications. And then, the final blow. A comment under the wedding post. David's boss, Roger Simmons. What a beautiful family, David. You and your kids look amazing. Best wishes to you all. Emily's smile turned ice cold. Perfect. Time to finish this. She clicked reply and started typing. Actually, I wasn't invited. My father decided his stepkids were more important than his real daughter. Just thought you should know. Her thumb hovered. Then, post. And just like that, there was no taking it back. David Carter's damage control. She could only imagine the scene playing out in her father's world. Him, sitting at dinner with his new wife, Susan, when his phone starts blowing up. Susan frowning, asking what's wrong. Him scrolling through Facebook, his face turning pale. And then, the text messages began. David Carter. Emily, call me now, David Carter. This isn't the way to handle this. David Carter, please take the post down. Let's talk. Talk? Now he wanted to talk? Emily let out a sharp laugh. Where was this urgency when she was 16, waiting for a birthday call that never came? Where was this panic when she sat alone at her college graduation, glancing at the empty seat where her father should have been? Now, suddenly, he cared? Too. Damn late. She watched as more people jumped into the comments. Her mom's old friend, Mark. David, what the hell, man? Why wasn't Emily at the wedding? She's your daughter. Her stepmom's co-worker. This is really messed up. Yikes. Some random distant cousin. Wow, I have no words. And then, the first sign of desperation. David Carter left a comment under her post. Tessa's heart pounded as she read it. Emily, can we please talk? Call me. She let out a slow exhale. She had waited years for him to come to her. And now he was begging. The phone call she never expected. Her phone rang again. David Carter. This time? She picked up. Emily, he breathed, relief flooding his voice. We need to talk. She leaned back against her couch, crossing one leg over the other. Do we? She asked, her voice flat, emotionless. Because I figured you'd be too busy with your new family. Silence, then a heavy sigh. Come on, Em. You know that's not fair. Emily let out a sharp laugh. Fair? Like how you erased me from your life and didn't even invite me to your wedding. David groaned, the sound of a man who had no excuse. I didn't want things to be awkward. Emily's fury ignited like a flame. Awkward? For who? Your new wife? Your stepkids? God forbid your real daughter ruin your perfect little wedding. It wasn't like that, he muttered, his voice tight with frustration. Then tell me what it was like, Dad, she snapped, because from where I'm sitting, it looks a hell of a lot like you replaced me. David was silent, too silent, and that's when Emily knew. She had hit the truth. The final word. Emily, I didn't mean to hurt you, David said finally, his voice softer now. I've moved on. I have a new family now. There it was. The words that confirmed everything. She wasn't part of his life anymore. She was just a relic from a past he didn't want to deal with. Her fingers tightened around the phone. Right, she whispered, her throat tight. So when you posted my new family on Facebook, you meant it literally. Emily, it's not like that. No, she cut him off. Her voice was cold now. I get it, Dad. You replaced me, and that's fine. But don't expect me to act like it didn't happen. Emily, I don't want to fight with you. Neither do I, she said simply. I just want you to remember this moment. because it's the last time you'll ever get to pretend that what you did was okay. Click. She hung up. Her hands were shaking. But for the first time in years, she felt clear-headed. This wasn't just about a wedding. This wasn't just about being left out. This was about years of neglect catching up to him. He thought she would just move on, that she would let it go. Not this time. This time, David Carter was going to feel exactly what it was like to be shut out. Because this time, Emily had the power, and she knew exactly what her next move would be. Emily hadn't heard from David in 3 days. Not since she hung up on him. Not since she made it crystal clear that she wasn't going to let this go. And yet, her phone kept buzzing. Text after text. David Carter. Emily, please, just talk to me. David Carter. I know you're angry. I get it. But this isn't the way to handle things. David Carter. Can we meet? Just once. Please. She didn't respond because she wasn't ready to let him off the hook. For years, she had been the one waiting for him to remember her birthday, waiting for him to show up at her school recitals, waiting for him to care, and he never did. Now, he could wait for her. The knock at the door. It was a cold Friday night when she heard it. Knock, knock, knock. Emily froze in her kitchen, the spoon she was using to stir her tea hovering mid-air. Another knock. Louder this time. She set the mug down carefully, heart pounding. Through the peephole, David Carter. For the first time in years, he was standing outside her door. A wave of emotions crashed into her. Anger, resentment, a flicker of something almost like regret, but mostly cold, hard, indifference. She debated ignoring it, letting him stand there in the freezing night like he had left her standing alone for years. But no, she wanted to see this. She wanted to watch him squirm. Slowly, she unlocked the door and pulled it open. They stared at each other. For a moment, neither spoke. And then, David forced a small, hesitant smile. Emily, can I come in? She didn't move. Why? She asked, voice flat. His smile faltered. We need to talk. She folded her arms. Talk? She repeated, her tone sharp. About what exactly? The wedding you didn't invite me to? The new family you were so excited to show off online? David sighed heavily, rubbing a hand over his face. I didn't mean for it to be this way, he muttered. Emily let out a cold laugh. Didn't mean for what? Didn't mean for me to find out? Or didn't mean to completely erase me? David's jaw tightened. Emily, it's not like that. Then explain it to me, she cut in, because from where I'm standing, it looks a hell of a lot like you replaced me with a new wife and her kids. Silence. The moment of truth. David's shoulders slumped. He suddenly looked old. I didn't want to deal with the past, he admitted. Emily's chest tightened. The past? She repeated. You mean me? David exhaled sharply. I thought you didn't need me anymore, he said quietly. You've been independent for so long. You never called, never asked for anything. Emily felt her blood boil. I stopped calling because you were never there, she snapped. You taught me to live without you, Dad, and now you're acting like I made you feel abandoned? David swallowed hard. His eyes darted away. That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant, she shot back. She took a step closer. Let me make this easy for you, she said, voice like ice. You wanted a new life without me in it? Congratulations. You got exactly what you wanted. And with that, she slammed the door in his face. The shock of being shut out, David stood there, staring at the closed door. For the first time in his life, he felt completely, utterly alone. Emily stood on the other side, her hands clenched into fists, her chest rising and falling heavily, and yet she didn't regret it, not for a second. He deserved to know what it felt like, to be shut out, ignored, forgotten. And this time, she wasn't going to be the one to fix it. because he had never tried to fix things for her. For once, he could feel the weight of being the one left behind. The final attempt, she thought that was the end of it. She thought that after she slammed the door in his face, he would finally get the message. But David Carter, he wasn't done yet, because the next morning her phone buzzed again. New email from David Carter. Subject, we need to talk. Emily stared at it. For a long time, she didn't move. She just watched his name on her screen. Her fingertips tingled over the keyboard. Then, she clicked it open. The email that changed everything. Emily, I know you're angry. You have every right to be. I should have handled things differently. I should have fought for you. I didn't, and I regret it more than you'll ever know. I don't want to leave things like this. Can we meet? Just once? I owe you that much. Dad. Emily closed her eyes. A part of her had waited years to hear those words, to hear him admit he was wrong, to hear him say he regretted everything. But now that she had them, they meant nothing. Because regret wasn't love. Regret was just proof that he finally realized what he had thrown away, and she wasn't interested in picking up the broken pieces. With a slow, steady breath, she closed the email without responding, and just like that, she moved on. The email sat unread in Emily's inbox for 3 days. Every time she opened her phone, it was there. A reminder that David Carter still wanted something from her. A conversation, a chance to explain himself, a way to make himself feel better. But what about her? Where was his guilt when she spent birthdays blowing out candles alone? Where was his regret when she graduated without him in the audience? Where was this desperation when she was a little girl staring at the front door, waiting for a dad who never came? Now, suddenly, he couldn't handle being ignored? Too damn bad. And yet, somewhere deep inside, a tiny voice whispered, "What if you regret not hearing him out?" Emily hated that voice because it sounded too much like the teenage version of herself, the girl who still hoped, still dreamed of a father who would wake up one day and realize how much he had lost. But she wasn't that girl anymore. The call from Mom. She was in the middle of folding laundry when her phone rang. Mom. Emily smiled as she answered. "Hey, Mom. Hey, sweetheart. I need to talk to you about something." Immediately, Emily's stomach clenched. There was hesitation in her mother's voice. "What's wrong?" A long pause. Then, her mother sighed. "Your father called me." Emily's grip tightened around the fabric in her hands. And Linda's voice was soft, careful. "He wants to see you." Emily closed her eyes. Of course he did. First the emails, then the texts. And now, dragging Mom into it. "No," she said firmly. "Emily, just listen." "No," she repeated, sharper this time. "You don't get it, Mom. He didn't just forget to invite me to his wedding. He chose to leave me out. He's been choosing to leave me out for years." Her mother was quiet for a moment, then, "I know, sweetheart, and I don't blame you for how you feel." Emily waited for the but. "But I think he's scared." She let out a bitter laugh. "Scared of what? Losing me? He already did." "Emily, people don't always realize what they have until it's too late." Her mother's voice was hopeful. The same kind of hope Emily had carried for years, the kind that destroyed her. "Mom, I love you, but this isn't your battle." He made his choice. And now, he has to live with it. Linda sighed again. "I just don't want you to have regrets, Em." Emily's response was calm, certain. "I won't." And this time, she meant it. The final showdown, a week passed, then 2. Emily thought she was done with him. Thought maybe, just maybe, he had finally gotten the message. Until a knock at the door. Emily's breath caught in her throat. She knew, even before she checked the peephole. She knew who it was, and she was right. David Carter, standing on her doorstep. For the first time in years. For a long moment she just stared, debated, ignoring it. letting him stand there in the cold the way she had been left waiting for so many years. But something inside her, maybe curiosity, maybe a flicker of anger, made her reach for the lock. Slowly, she pulled the door open. They stood there, face to face, father and daughter. And for the first time, David Carter looked afraid. The last conversation. "Can I come in?" he asked, voice hesitant. Emily didn't move. "Why?" David let out a long breath. "Because I lost you," he admitted. Emily folded her arms. "Yeah, you did." He swallowed. "Emily, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I don't want the last thing between us to be anger." Emily studied him. For so many years she had dreamed of this moment, a moment where he finally looked at her and saw his mistakes. And now it was too late. "I'm not angry anymore," she said quietly. For a second, relief flickered across his face. But then, she continued, "I'm also not interested in fixing this." His expression fell. "Emily, please." "No," she interrupted. She took a step back. "You don't get to walk away for years and then decide you want back in when it's convenient for you. That's not how family works. That's not how love works." David's lips pressed into a thin line. For a moment, he looked like he wanted to argue. But what could he say? There was no defense. "I hope you're happy with your new family," she said simply. Then, she stepped back inside. David's eyes widened. "Emily!" But before he could say another word, she shut the door in his face, the aftermath. That was the last time she saw him. At first, he kept trying. Emails, texts, more phone calls. She never answered, because David Carter had already taught her how to live without him. And now, she was finally ready to move forward, without him, without his regret, without waiting for a love that was never going to come, because she had spent her whole life chasing a father who never chased her back. And now, she was done running. The epilogue. Moving on that night, Emily got a notification. David Carter deleted his wedding photos. She smirked. Too little. Too late. For the first time in her life, she felt free. No more waiting for calls that would never come. No more hoping he would finally see her. No more pretending that his absence didn't hurt. She had drawn a line in the sand. And this time, she wasn't looking back.